AW's on the phone to me. Oh, I've set up a new EV business. Do you fancy some chargers down St Andrews? I'm like, oh, here we go. But what next?
Depending on the size of the team or club, there's a dedicated sustainability manager. And I think like in the Premier League, for example, there's some initiatives around everybody having a full-time sustainability lead.
We move with the market. We're really fortunate that, with our recruitment business, we know where influential people are ending up. We know where they're moving, and we build relationships with them.
Welcome to another episode of The Deal Room then. Here we are. We've got the usual suspects in the room. We've got Adrian Wright, we've got Ian Dutton from Sporting Group International, and we've got Harry Lynch from Sporting Jobs. Adrian, where's the branding? And these guys are...
Well, I had a late night last night, and had a wardrobe malfunction for the podcast. So I do apologise.
That conjures up quite an
Not
image
good enough, Ed.
Yeah.
I got dressed in the dark. I think that's what most people say.
Oh, fair enough. Okay. So this episode then, we are talking the Sports Sustainability Consortium, which I know has been shrouded in secrecy for a little while, and finally you can talk about it.
Absolutely. No one has known about this. It's been under lock and key for a long time, but finally it's here.
Okay. First question is the obvious one. What is it?
Well, not many people know, but 8 years ago, as a result of our work in the sponsorship space with SGI, we were approached by a fairly large EV charging company. They don't just do EV chargers. They're a £15 billion business, operate in 150 territories around the world. And they said, look, we know you guys are pretty well connected in sport. Any chance you can get some chargers in at some of these clubs? And we were like, oh, yeah, we could. So we ended up having quite a few conversations, but we were so early in the market. Right. Most football clubs were like, chargers? No, not yet. Maybe later. So cut a long story short, I thought, well, do you know what? Sport isn't going to be the market for that yet. And we're going to go and try some other stuff. So that 8 years took us into car dealerships, golf clubs, garden centres, hotels, you name it, Tesco, and we literally cut our teeth in a market we knew nothing about. I've got a little bit of experience of being in the energy market, my time at British Gas, but not when it comes to installation. So I was the sales guy in the room. Okay. So I was the guy trying to conduct the orchestra around, effectively getting sales in. So what's happened as a result of that is that business has now been going for 8 years. SGI is 10, so it's not a huge difference in trading period, and we've very quickly established the link between sport and sustainability, chargers, solar is literally like hotcakes. It's the in vogue subject, and the fact that we can assist clubs with facilitating that divide between how do you install them, how do you finance them, where do you get the equipment from, who services them, the fact that we've been through all that now, it's like this is the new era.
How do you know when the right time is something like this? Because like you said, at the time, when you first started, it was too early. But at the same time, if you leave it too long, other people are then going to get in on the party. So it's difficult, isn't it?
I think you never, working in a new business environment, you never know when the right time is. And it's being around long enough to capitalise when it is. We've put a significant amount of capital into the projects in the last 8 years. And it's only very recent, in the last probably 6 to 12 months, we've seen a real shift. And the fact that our network is so strong in the sports arena, it literally is like just lighting the Dutch paper for it. It's been really, really kind of heartwarming that people are actually taking the course on the subject.
I'd say within my time in sport, sort of coming up to 4 years now, even in that sort of period, players are now driving electric vehicles, all of them. Mostly, lots of electrical vehicles. A lot of company benefits that we see on the recruitment side is that there's EV salary schemes and workplace grants and all these sorts of things. So I think just generally the shift to EV vehicles has been quite prominent in the last 3 or 4 years.
Yeah, I remember when I was club side. Actually, I remember when you first started the installation business. I think I was one of the first approaches. AW's on the phone to me. Oh, I've set up a new EV business. Do you fancy some chargers down St Andrews? I'm like, oh, here we go. But
what next?
But to be honest, and I think it was just the unknown. I genuinely do. I think it was like, the total unknown. People didn't know what the movement was going to be like within the next 10 years. And I've certainly noticed, and like Harry and Adrian alluded to, since I've been here for the last 2 years, it's just exploded. You know, clubs are realising, actually, do you know what? We really need to have a clear focus on our whole ESG strategy, which solar and EV charging points are a big part of that. Not only because, you know, they need to be doing right by the planet and, you know, supporting that, but actually there's a huge potential revenue stream and cost saving to the clubs as a result of it. So, yeah, it's been a real success. And yeah, it's great to be able to announce to the world what we're doing and our ambitions moving forward.
So what does it mean then? I mean, we've talked about the sort of chargers, we've talked about solar. There's quite a sort of lot of layers and moving parts to make this happen. So what exactly is it all about?
Well, when we approached it from a sponsorship perspective, so we looked at it and thought, right, okay, who's making moves in the market? So there was a company called Solax that did a deal with Borussia Dortmund in the Bundesliga. Ian and I flew out to Munich to a large solar show to meet them. And we pitched to them. They loved it. We've got a club lined up in the UK ready to go. And they came back to us and said, oh, sorry, guys, just realised we've got an exclusive clause in our contract. We can't do any of the clubs. We were like, oh, my God, we've traipsed all the way over to bloody Munich to see these guys. And for whatever reason, it just didn't happen. So anyway, that triggered some further thoughts around, okay, well, what other brands are available for us to go and speak to? So, you know, as people will have seen, Manchester City have done a deal with Jinko. Jinko are the largest solar panel manufacturer literally on this planet. They've already made a mark within the sports space. There are many others that are also trying to make strides. One thing the clubs don't realise is whenever they go to an installer, whether it's solar or chargers, generally it's the decision of the installer of what products they install.
Okay.
Generally, the clubs wouldn't be saying, yeah, I'll have that charger and I'll have that colour and I'll have that panel and I'll have that colour. It doesn't work like that. So it's very much driven around relationships with the installers and the manufacturers. But we're coming at it a different way. We're bringing the manufacturers to the table because they are the experts around their products. We're bringing the installers to the table, and we're also bringing the financiers to the table. And this effectively has created the consortium. Everybody's independent. We're not in a joint venture. We're not got a company together. It's literally, if I need someone to talk about solar panels, I can phone Mr. or Mrs. X and they can give me 25 years experience of the solar panel industry within half an hour. So that's the benefit of our network, is that we effectively are just connecting clubs with the real movers and shakers within these two markets from literally a standing start.
So in a way, it's very similar to what you've kind of been doing for the last 10 years as SGI. Your partnerships, you're introducing people, I guess, really, aren't you?
Yeah, and it's a very confusing market. And as we all know, within football clubs, or any sports club, you know, people wear lots of hats, and someone professing to be a specialist in solar and EV chargers is virtually zero. You know, it might be a sustainability manager, and Harry will sure give you a narrative around how clubs are really pushing that sustainability role. And I think, you know, clubs are now starting to say, well, actually, what are we doing? And how can we benefit the club, whether that be a financial saving or whether that be, you know, servicing their staff or customers and fans and conference clients around having a service around green.
Tell us about that, Harry. What's the sort of difference here then?
Yeah, I think sometimes, depending on the size of the team or club, there's a dedicated sustainability manager. And I think, like in the Premier League, for example, there's some initiatives around everybody having a full-time sustainability lead. But sometimes it falls under the guise of the stadium manager, the operations manager, the facilities manager. And I think particularly on that EV and solar stuff is that, you know, you sometimes speak to a professional sports team. What are you doing in this space around EV and solar? And actually, everyone has a million questions. Okay, well, we'd like to put some in, but do we pay for them? Do we have financing options on them? Do we own the bay, or do they, you know, is somebody renting that charger on our behalf? Right, and are we getting paid a service? Or, you know, there's so many questions. And I think we've all been around it for a couple of years now. You kind of begin to understand the various options. And like anything, it's different for each club. And little things like the location of clubs is relevant. You know, if you've got a big site car park with, you know, poor EV charging capabilities in the local area, for example, it makes it more interesting or viable as an option. So there's 1,000,001 kind of areas of this, isn't there?
The whole recruitment side of things is really interesting, you know, because a lot of these new initiatives and, you know, clubs realise, oh, we have to do something, but actually we don't really understand it. we're not educated enough, and actually who's actually going to drive it, who's going to be the driver and take accountability internally. And all, it will just normally, historically, just land on someone, and it'll just be an extra part to their overall job. But it's now becoming really serious, like something that clubs really see. Okay, well, we have to be seen to be actually being a real community club, and helping and supporting the impacts of the local community. And also from, if you look at it from a brand perspective, what a lot of commercial teams probably don't realise, and are perhaps a little bit short-sighted with, is a lot of brands nowadays want to align their brand with clubs or rights holders that are doing good within the community and for the environment. So they've got their own ESG goals, so they want to make sure that their brand values are aligned with a particular rights holder, which could be, it could be the difference between a deal getting executed or not. So these are all fine margins, but they're all added valves to a lot of these rights holders and clubs moving forward.
It's an interesting one because it was always felt like it's one of those things that people have been talking about for a long time, but perhaps just paying lip service to it, whereas now they've actually got to do it and kind of live it, and it's got to be the culture of the club a bit more perhaps now as well.
And a big driver in that is because of the new generation. The whole Gen Z generation have grown up, literally, as part of environmental sustainability is a massive part of them. What they eat, the way the planet's looked after, all that kind of stuff is huge for them. So, and these are our leaders for the future. These are the people that are going to be running businesses for the future. So they're going to have their own values, and they're going to want to be bringing that into the brands themselves. And so it's just an evolution. It's changing, mindset's changing. And clubs and rights holders and everyone has to be part of that.
Away from brand positioning as well, there is actually just some enormous savings to clubs. When this sort of kicked off, I got to know Plymouth Argyle really closely, and Christian, who's the sort of head of a lot of things there, I think, but he takes a sort of lead on this. Their floodlights are now LED floodlights. They've got waterless urinals throughout the club. They've got sensors on every light and, cistern in toilets. And actually over the period of, I think the yearly report that they did, remember he said the solar on the roof would power 800 houses for the year or something. It's really significant actually. And, there's always an example of a club that, we spent X, but it paid it back in Y. And now we're actually paying back to the grid, or we're using battery storage and things like that. So there is a great commercial angle, but also some huge savings too, which important.
There are loads of examples actually of clubs already doing this. I mean, Henswood Town is kind of the one that always springs to mind, doesn't it? They put solar pretty much everywhere at the moment, haven't they?
Yeah, and I think the cost of it is what surprised people actually. It's not as expensive as everybody thinks it is. And, we always try and establish what something is called a cash flow positive position. So if someone's going to borrow money to put the system in, we're always looking for their monthly repayments minus the savings that they make from the generation of their own electricity to be cash flow positive. And I think every one that we've secured so far has been cash flow positive, which for a club, if they're going to save, let's say it's £15,000 a month and they've got a finance bill of £7,000, they're £7,000 better off.
Yeah.
And they're paying for the system that will be theirs after a period of time. So it is really a no-brainer. And it's like, as an FD, if you're not looking to make savings for your club as a result of putting technology in that can make those savings, what are you doing?
Yeah, it's a fair point. I mean, we've talked solar, we've talked about EV charging points. I know it's much more than that. So what are the kind of main pillars of what clubs can install here?
Yeah, I think if you were looking at it in layman's terms, every club has a stadium. Every club has a training ground. So there are two assets that can be used for solar. So they both have roof space. Some clubs can be limited based on stadium age. So the roofs may not take the solar panels. It really just depends, and we do a full audit on that and establish whether that's possible. And in the charger space, naturally, football stadiums are a fulcrum for communities. So there may be a requirement that one of our partners might want to rent the bays on that car park and offer the club a deal for a long period of time to lock those bays into what's called a bay rent agreement. Or the clubs may decide themselves they want to put their own charges in and generate their own revenue. We're hearing mixed responses to don't want to be tied up for too long to, well, actually, we'll put them in and we'll generate our own revenue. The training ground, completely different kettle of fish. It's got loads of land available, so you can be putting stuff on what's called ground mounting systems. They literally, the players are turning up in Teslas, in all sorts of electric vehicles, asking, well, I'm going to be here for 3 or 4 hours. I want to be able to charge my car to get home. Hello, Mr. Club owner, can you provide me with a service for me to be able to do that? So it's just varied, really. But I think a lot of clubs, until they actually see what a proposal looks like from a savings perspective, they've really got no idea of what actually can do for them. And I would say the majority of people we have sent proposals to have genuinely been surprised by the results that we've illustrated are possible. And bear in mind, these systems are not something we've just knocked up on a spreadsheet. They are globally recognised software solutions that are used by hundreds of thousands of companies across the globe selling solar. So it's like an industry standard metric that says, right, your roof is that way, elevation, it's north, south, east, west. You've got no trees around there, so no shading. It sounds really, geeky, but it is that detailed.
Yeah,
very
sure.
detailed.
Yeah.
So the pillars for the club to consider is, okay, what can be installed? How much is it going to cost? How do I pay for it? And ultimately, who's going to install it? And how are they going to back the installation and make sure that for the lifespan of the equipment, it's going to be serviceable and it's going to continue to be delivering those savings, or continually delivering the service to the drivers, whether it be public people coming to the stadium or staff and players coming to the training ground.
Are you noticing that from Sporting Jobs' point of view? I think you talked about the kind of sustainability side in terms of those roles, that it could almost be anything. It's sort of like the Wild West, but it sounds like bringing this kind of thing in, it then is a more specific role.
Yeah, it's a massive growing area for sure. And I think if you look at some of the clubs, look at Man City, for example, or City Football Group, there's going to be teams of people that sit across ESG and sustainability and environmental. So it's a growing area for sure. And I think, again, people are more savvy with things. A lot of clubs and large ownership groups have hotels on site and areas like that as well. So it becomes a bigger beast depending on the club and the ownership level.
We should talk about challenges as well, because we've talked about all the positives. I guess that's one of those things. Can you just dip your toe in, or is it all or nothing? Have you kind of really got to dive in and go for it?
No, we've had clubs that have just said, we'll have 6 charges at the training ground, please. We've installed them, we maintain them, we provide an annual service to them, and literally we want to make it as seamless as possible. And there's someone at the end of the phone if there's a problem. All of the systems, whether it be solar or chargers, are all now managed by software solutions. So we literally, from our head office, can find out exactly what's going on at any single charger that we have installed. And same with solar. It's all, as you can imagine, with technology nowadays, it's all Big Brother.
Yeah.
And we don't want clubs thinking that it's a bane on their life installing green technology.
Yeah, don't worry, Adrian's not on the roof installing the
He's
panels.
not. I'd love to have seen that.
We've got a good group of people around us that literally are industry experts, and that counts for a lot.
Okay, interesting. And I guess something else we should talk about, and I think you've alluded to it already, is sort of those exclusivity deals or contract lock-ins that you might struggle with. I mean, how do you kind of get through those?
I think there's restrictions in every industry, but we've navigated our way through knowing what clubs want. Ian and I have both sat club side, and we would probably been the guys that have been getting pitched to, when we were there. So we kind of know what questions people are going to be asking, and we just put ourselves in that position to say, okay, what do we think we would need to do to take back to the board? How will we proposition this to the board? And as long as it's very layman specific, it's all backed up by factual evidence. We've got case studies from stuff we've done with people that people can pick the phone up to and say, hello, Mr. Club X, can you guarantee that these guys are worth working with? And pretty much touch wood, most of the companies, all of the companies we dealt with would echo the fact that we do exactly what we say. Been around for 8 years, not 8 minutes or 8 months.
Yeah.
I think Aid's hit the nail on the head. We speak in layman's terms, but we know what we're talking about. We talk with a lot of credibility. We've been there, we've done it, we've delivered it, we understand it from a club perspective. I think the other really important part as well, and I think it was when I first started actually, Adrian said to me, his words were, I want to be the sports agency that leads globally when it comes to sustainability. We've already got a green tech installation business. We've had it for 8 years. We've got a very successful sports sponsorship agency. The two clearly, merge together very, very well. But actually, to be able to do that, we need to be authentic ourselves. Okay, well, what are we doing as a business? How can we make sure that actually what we're doing is, we're a leader in that space. So we moved to these offices. These are one of the most energy efficient offices in the whole of Birmingham. None of us drive to work. We all don't need to fundamentally because we're in the city centre and we can get trains, we can get public transport. We do cycle to work schemes every now and again.
Yeah, look forward to that one every year. No, yeah, we've a fleet of EV vehicles and those sort of things. It's
We've had carbon literate training.
Oh yeah, carbon literacy.
Just little things like that it doesn't sound particularly sexy, but the fact that we've sat in a room and an industry expert has told us for us to look out for certain things that can potentially be benefited and reduced as a result of just human activities around reducing CO2. Some of the stuff we've learned we would never have had a clue about, but now we do have an understanding of it, and we offset our emissions as well. Obviously, we've got people around the globe that travel in. Diego's here this week, over from Spain. Whatever we do from a travel perspective, whether that's going out of the UK or into the UK, we will offset. We'll pay an offset guarantee for the year for the company. Little things help, and I'm always a believer in kind of like you need to prove you can do it before you can start preaching it. So we've done that, and the 8 years has absolutely flown by, and what we've learned. We're 8 years ahead of anybody else now in the sports sector. So that's going to literally get us quite far very quickly, because it's not the sort of thing you can learn overnight.
Interesting time as well, isn't it? We're not going into politics too much, but certainly energy prices are going to be on the rise, traditional energy. So even if obviously there's the green side of it anyway, and being more sustainable, but financially it makes even more sense than ever before, doesn't
100%.
it?
Well, if you're driving a petrol car now versus an EV, Harry, good example, he's only just taken receipt as a new EV company car. He's not at the petrol pumps anymore. He's plugging his car in at home, and he's virtually kind of price inflation free. But I think the things that need to be considered is that there's also a requirement and reliance on grid supply. If it's a football club, your training ground could run off grid for a period of time. That's quite an interesting discussion to have, that you aren't reliant on the grid. For whatever reason. At the end of the day, the world's a bit of a scary place at the moment, and and if it ever did happen that our energy infrastructure was kind of affected in some way, having supply of electricity generated by your own building sounds quite a good thing. And Plymouth is a good example. Kristen will wax lyrically about what that solar does. Have a look on LinkedIn. He will actually post up some of the reports that the solar system's doing. He says literally they can't believe they didn't do it earlier. And a lot of clubs need to start dialing in on that.
Ian mentioned it earlier as well, around like the importance of it to the Gen Z sort of part of the population. I'm not saying from a recruitment point that people are going, what's this company's policy around this or that? But I think if you're joining a professional sports team or a big business, and they have a policy around that, they have an interest in that space, it's a real mark of them as a company. It shows the direction they're headed in, if you know what I mean. I think it is an important thing to say.
Are you getting to the stage of getting candidates going, it's not just about the pay packet, it's not just about that? We do want to know a bit more about
in some scenarios,
yeah, really.
Yeah.
Interesting. So where we are with it, sport very much fits with this. It's not necessarily your most obvious choices in terms of partnering together, but actually it works very well.
Yeah, and complete fortune more than strategy. When someone like Delta Electronics knock your door and ask you 8 years ago, can you put some charges into football clubs? You kind of look back and think, well, that's a bit of a random conversation. But we ended up not setting up SGI EV or SGI Solar because obviously it's completely irrelevant to the sports business. But what we did see is a gap available in the market for other things away from sport that we've done, and we've cut our teeth on it. And then just serendipity, I think there's a word Abby used when she first joined SGI. We have a serendipity moment with the whole green tech and the sports business now forging. And I would say, and the guys will probably echo this, that every single phone call we make to a club asking them about this subject, every single one says, yeah, we want to hear more. Or we've already done it.
Well, they've done it, yeah. That's the other thing. I think the other one as well is the clubs are obviously, there's a lot more development going on at clubs nowadays. People are, a lot of clubs are, they feel like their infrastructure, they want to invest more, because they want to provide a better fan experience, all that kind of stuff. So they're building new stands, there's new grounds being built, as part of those new developments. It's literally like, it has to be done. You have to kind of like build these stands with that sort of solar EV charging space in mind, So, there's a lot going on at the moment.
We should talk about the next 10 years then, the future. I mean, obviously 8 years ago, you kind of founded this company. It seemed too soon at the time, but now you're in a perfect position to kind of start rolling that out. And actually, talking of new stands, I mean, there's actually a lot of very old stadiums in just this country alone. So you think, well, they are going to get replaced eventually when they get to it. So how do you envisage the next 10 years looking for sport and this?
I think, we move with the market. We're really fortunate that, with our recruitment business, we know where influential people are ending up. We know where they're moving. We know, and we build relationships with them. And for us, we always want our last project to be able to be given to someone else to consider. So if we have a case study that comes off the back of, we've got 3 or 4 installations that are live, that are taking place, that will be completed very soon, a promotional video around it, we'll have a case study, and someone can always pick the phone up to that club and say, how did you get on with this? Is it doing what you thought it was going to do? Any problems? And, as long as we deliver on what we say we're going to do, that process should be fairly seamless. It doesn't always go to plan. There's some bumps in the road in some of the installations, but we've got 8 years experience now to kind of see those before they happen, which is something we didn't have the benefit of when we first started. Made a lot of mistakes very early on, not dangerous mistakes, electrical obviously, but just financial mistakes, as in like hiring the wrong people, investing too much in this and that. But we're on a good keel now.
Anything else to add, Chents, before we bring this episode to a close?
I think just adding to the last question, I think this is only the start. I think this is an area that's really going to explode over the next 10 years. I think a lot of clubs, rights holders, and not just sporting venues, I'm on about venues across the whole of the globe fundamentally. I think they're all becoming accustomed to the fact that actually, do you know what, having solar, having EV chargers, number one, the cost is coming down of the actual product itself, as Adrian's alluded to. There's obviously a lot of other cost benefits to actually having it installed anyway. It's benefiting the planet in lots of different ways. So hotels, arenas, even like domestic properties, your own houses, you're going to find that there's going to be more and more and more EV charging points, solar on roofs as you go through moving forward. The government have already pledged and put in huge schemes around like new build housing estates, So it's just becoming more and more prevalent and more the norm, shall we say? I think that's probably a good word, just the norm. In 10 years' time, I think actually someone will be, they'll be looking at a house and thinking, do you know what? I don't want to buy that because it hasn't got solar, or actually, can I have solar? And how can I make sure that it does? So it's just a mindset thing, and I think it goes back to what we were saying earlier. New generation, it's kind of like, okay, well. It's like going back in the day when, my parents would have like toilets out in the back, right in the rear end of the garden. You'd have to go outside to go to the toilet. No, you wouldn't even look at that. But what I'm trying to say is it's evolution. Do you know what I mean? It's like that's what happens, and I think the younger generation, and not just the younger generation, I think everyone of today is realising that actually, do you know what, this is really important, and we've got to be part of this movement moving forward.
Just finally on that as well, some sports lend themselves to solar. So I'm thinking even like big cricket grounds, there's so much land, golf courses, so much land and capacity for ground mounted solar and things like that, race courses. We're seeing the rise of paddle at the moment. There's paddle courts going up everywhere. They're all going to have a couple of EV chargers in the car park and solar on the roof. Probably you can see it. So just I suppose anyone who picks this up and wants to have a chat with us about it, or definitely Adrian's diary's free, he's never doing any work.
Always space.
It's interesting actually you bring that up because it's such an obvious choice, isn't it? These massive stadiums are ripe for it, really, aren't they, in terms of solar?
Roof space is not at a premium, but the right roof space is at a premium. And the fact that clubs have that at their disposal, and they're all very, very electricity hungry. The match day consumption of a professional football club is obscene. It is obscene, but it only happens 25, 30 times a year, so there's all that stuff that can be generated on the other times of year when it's not required, that you can sell it back to the grid and make some money.
Really interesting subject, gentlemen. Thank you as always.
Pleasure.
Thanks
Ed.
ever so much, Ed.
Cheers.
Thank you.
Thank you.